Okay, team. War and Peace, Book 1, Chapter 1. I'll just read the first little paragraph to get us going. Eh bien, mon prince. So Genoa and Lucca are now no more than family estates of the Bonapartes. I warn you, if you don't say that this means war, if you still permit yourself to condone all the infamies, all the atrocities of this Antichrist, and that's what I really believe he is, I will have nothing more to do with you. You are no longer my friend, my faithful slave, as you say. But how do you do? I see that I'm frightening you. Sit down and tell me all about it. And so we start. The setting is at Anna Pavlovna's little soiree, a party in Moscow she's having, and she's speaking with Prince Vasili. And right away we see the excitement and fervor of Anna. And she's, the context is that Bonaparte is being aggressive, and I think he's sort of attacking, or at least there wasn't a battle per se, but overtaking Austria and Prussia. And Anna is just feverishly doesn't think too much of Napoleon. And it's obvious that she's had conversations with Prince Vasili before. And perhaps they haven't seen eye to eye, and so here we have her just kind of very pointedly talking to him. You will no longer be my friend if you do not kind of agree with me on this Bonaparte, who's just behaving like the Antichrist. Anna is the in service to the Empress. Alexander the Emperor, and the Empress is Maria. And Anna, this is the status she has. And Prince Vasili himself, it says here, he was a man of high rank and office. And so here we have two people kind of in the elites of the Moscow scene, and they're meeting. And Prince Vasili was the first to arrive at her party. And so in contrast to Anna, we have Prince Vasili. The prince responded, "What a scathing attack." And so it seems like they're in conflict, but it's not at all the case. He said this not in the least disconcerted by this reception. He came in wearing his embroidered court uniform, knee breeches, low shoes, with stars on his breast and a serene expression on his flat face. And so it's like, we learn right away, these are people who have had their roles they're playing. Anna is the excitable, loyal part to play, and Prince Vasili, right away we can sort of see he's this sort of very much more coolly diplomatic person. He went up to Anna and, presenting his gleaming, perfumed bald head, kissed her hand and placidly seated himself on the sofa. And so we get this real interesting description of these contrasting people. Set my mind at rest, he said, without altering his voice and intonation, beneath the politeness and concern of which could be detected indifference. And so I find this kind of fascinating. You have these people playing these roles. Anna is this excitable loyalist, and you have Prince Vasili. Also, you know, it's something that's almost unconscious to themselves. They've kind of assumed this way of interacting that they found successful, and hard to be friends with these people in a way. More so with Anna, I think, very much an excitable person. Would be much more easier to be a friend of hers, but you know, you have acquaintances like Prince Vasili, who's like diplomatic, cool, sort of saying all the right things, so that never ruffling the feathers of anyone so much, but sort of calculated in the back of his mind. And they go on talking, and we kind of get their characters revealed even more. Prince Vasili always spoke listlessly, like an actor repeating a part in an old play, kind of like that. Anna, on the other hand, was brimming with zest and animation, despite her 40 years. To be an enthusiast had become a social attitude with her, and sometimes even when she did not feel like it. And so it's like, they're both, very much get the sense, they're both playing roles, they've developed their identities, kind of very contrasting personalities, but they sort of understand each other at the same time. They're not really in conflict with each other, even though they're quite conflicting people. The discreet smile that continually played over her face and was incongruous with her faded features revealed, as in a spoiled child, a constant awareness of the charming defect she neither wished nor even found necessary to correct. And then Anna goes on and has this long speech to Prince Vasili, just of how loyal she is to Alexander and how she feels he's the only one who can save them from this aggressive Napoleon. Russia alone must be Europe's savior. Our benefactor, who she's referring to, the Alexander, is aware of his exalted calling and will be true to it. That is the one thing I have faith in. Our good and sublime sovereign is faced with the undertaking of the greatest role on earth. And so she just goes on in this kind of tone. And then right at the end of this long speech, she suddenly stopped and smiled wryly at her own fervor. And so, you know, you get carried away, but you're totally in vibe with your own theme, with your own persona. And I thought that was a very clever description. And then the prince in return says, "Well, I believe if they had sent you," said the prince with a smile, "instead of the diplomat they had sent, you would have taken the King of Prussia by storm and won his acquiescence." And so he's kind of like reinforcing Anna. It's kind of like, well, you should be our diplomat. I mean, like, who can resist your fervor? And so they're kind of they're sort of encouraging each other in a way and affirming each other in their roles and in their attitudes. And then the story starts going on to other things. So the real reason Prince had come to this was to impress upon Anna, who had the ear of the Empress, this position that was open in the government, and perhaps he could get this position for his son, Anatole, I think. And he just casually, I think there's a point here, he says here, tell me, he added with elaborate casualness, as if the question he was about to ask had just occurred to him, when in fact it was the chief purpose of his visit. And they get into this conversation about this open position of which someone else already has a leg up on it. And so it kind of looks like it's not going to happen. And so Prince Vasili is a little bit disappointed at Anna's response to that. The prince slapped into an impassive silence. And then sort of to kind of to cheer him up or something, Anna quickly turns the conversation to his daughter, which is, it says she's just come of age, so meaning she's starting to attend these parties. I'm not sure what age this would be, but just a very young, beautiful woman. And she's commenting on that, and they start talking about his 2 sons and his family. So we're starting to get introduced to Prince Vasili's children, Hélène, Anatole, and Hippolyte. And it's not a really lovingly conversations, but it's like these 2 older adults speaking about children. And what am I to do? Prince Vasili said. You know, I've done everything as a father could do for their education, and they've both turned out to be imbeciles. He's talking about the 2 boys now. And so the conversation gets to be a little bit personal, and the prince sort of lets his guard down a bit with Anna. I am your faithful slave again, he says to Anna, and you alone I can confess this. My children are the bane of my existence, my cross. That is how I explain it to myself. He broke off with a gesture expressing his resignation to a cruel fate. And so there's not many parents who would outright say this to their children, except out of some sort of cruelty. But you know, I think there's a larger percent of parents who maybe unconsciously think this. You know, being a parent is difficult. And here we have Prince Vasili. His children are grown, it seems. They're adults. And, you know, in his mind, he's done everything he can. And, you know, you have, in your own mind, and you see this often, in speaking with others, it's just like I've done all I can, and it's not working out. What else could I have done? And of course, to yourself, you can't see any alternatives. But with self-awareness, you could reflect a little bit more, or sometimes others can see things. But anyway, we have this interesting sort of confidant relationship happening with Anna and the prince. Talking about his children, of which he's not particularly happy. And so Anna suggests, well, why don't you marry off Anatole? And so we start getting this chapter is pretty dense. And so we have this whole conversation getting introduced to Prince Vasili and Anna, and then we start getting introduced to these other characters, Prince Vasili's children, Hélène, Anatole, and Hippolyte, and she suggests, well, I know who we could marry Anatole off to. And Prince Vasili's concerned is like, is this princess rich? And of course she is. She's Princess Maria Bolkonskaya, so this is another key character. She's the daughter of her father, Prince Bolkonskaya, I should say, or Bolkonskaya, I guess you could say it either way, and her brother Andrei. And so it's a little bit of a dense chapter, starting to get introduced to all these people and who the heck are all these people and which ones are important and so on and so forth. And the other person is Lisa, who's married to Prince Andrei. And so this topic of, you know, maybe you could get freed from this burden of supporting these adult children who aren't bringing you much happiness by marrying to this rich girl. And Prince is totally on board with this. It's like suddenly he takes her hand, Anna's hand, and for some reason, bending it downward, arrange this matter for me, and I shall be your faithful slave forever. She is of a good family and rich, and that is all I want. And so he's like, the first reason he came to this party, he got a stop sign. It didn't work for him, but there's this other thing that he wasn't anticipating. Anna says, oh, hey, this might solve some of your problems and burdens of having children. Let's marry this girl off, or your son off to this rich girl. I think this could work. And Prince is like, yeah, man, help me out here. This would be great. And that's sort of the end of the chapter. The party goes on into chapter 2, and we'll get introduced more, but there's kind of a density. You can see there's a real density to the novels here. This is just a few pages, but we're just jumping in. We get a real feel for these particular two characters and in their conversation. They talk about a few other characters that are introduced, and without musing too much more about it, all the ramifications or implications, these things will all just work out as we read together. So I guess the main characters of this chapter was Prince Vasili and Anna Pavlovna, who's having this party. And this party will go on in the further chapters, and we'll get introduced to more characters as we go.